Andrew Jeune here with your Asian Racing Review, joined as always by Michael Cox, the editor of the Asian Racing Report, in Hong Kong as we speak. But Michael only just back from a wonderful meeting at Meydan for the Dubai World Cup, where Japan reigned supreme once more.
Yeah, great to be here, Andrew, and great to be back in Hong Kong after a fantastic night at Meydan. The Japanese came in numbers. They came away with the two biggest Group 1s on the night and a UAE Derby win as well. It's a fantastic night of racing, and Equinox, the undoubted star.
Yeah, well, let's start with him, because I always think the Shima Classic is generally the best race tonight anyway. It looked that way on paper, but Equinox, for mine, took apart a high-class field. What were your thoughts?
Well, we came there asking what if, but really, he was even money favourite. I think a lot of people wanted to try and talk him down, pick holes in his track work, look at his sort of mannerisms. And then also the tempo question was raised. Who leads? Well, I just thought it was just such a great sign for this horse. It's just his seventh start. This is his seventh career start. That Christophe Lemaire was able to just take this race by the scruff of the neck, lead, dominate, and leave them just at a standstill. The manner of which he won indicates there's more to come from him. But just that added element, that tactical ability now to be able to, take fate into his own hands and lead a race and do it well. Look, as the son of Kitasan Black, he was a dominant on speed runner as well. Maybe that's what we're going to see from him. Maybe it wasn't a trick shot. Maybe that's the best way to ride.
You'd obviously spoken to Christophe Lemaire. You probably spoke to him that week, but he was a guest on the podcast as well. Did you get that sense when you were talking to him about Equinox that he really felt this horse is in a different league to others he might have ridden in the past?
Yeah, you could sense that there's a confidence there about him. When he talks about Almond Eye in that podcast, he talks about a horse with tremendous courage and heart that's maybe in a body that's only just big enough to contain it. But this is a big, strong stallion that's still growing in himself. I don't know about physically, but certainly mentally, he's got a way to go. So there was optimism there from Christophe. He's called him a machine before. He's certainly but he's always been talking about raw talent, and then there's been a case of trying to get this horse to come around mentally through his 3-year-old season to form, and certainly from Christophe there's an excitement there that this might be the best horse he has ridden, but that always that the best is yet to come.
I think to put it into perspective, the horse that's run second, Westover, he's going to be competing in all the big European Group 1s, middle distance Group 1s this season. I think he sets a pretty good benchmark as far as the UK gallopers are concerned. Of course, with Japan middle distance horses, the big question is always looming. That first Sunday in October in Paris is the Arc de Triomphe. I'm assuming that's very much within their sights now, is it?
Yeah, well, I think the connections were asked about it on an average of every 5 seconds after the race. I was good enough to let them all be asked. I took a different tact. I went there after about 10 minutes and I asked them how many times they had been asked about the Arc. So I didn't ask them directly. Then I asked them anyway. I think it's an obsession. And whenever the next big thing in Japan arrives, it's going to be the question. Now, the problem is that they prefer him to race on top of the ground. He's just rarely going to get it for an Arc. So, look, long way to go between now and then. He's going to go back to Japan, and look, it's not just all about Equinox in Japan. There's an incredible depth of staying ranks there in Japan, some of which we'll see this weekend in the Osaka High at Hanshin.
And the World Cup, need a quick mention on that. Went to Japan as well, as you mentioned. Horse came from a long way back. Not the fairy tale finish, though, for Frankie Dettori, but he did get a Group 1 on the card with Lord North, but Country Grammar couldn't go back-to-back.
No, it was a lot of... talk about being not all about Equinox in Japan. It was all about Frankie this week in Dubai. A hero, he couldn't extend that record. He was equal record for most wins in the Dubai World Cup, but he couldn't make it his own record there on Country Grammar. But, much loved representative for racing, and particularly there in the UAE. Talk about being asked a lot. the same question. Frankie must have been asked so many times. He's been asked whether this is really his farewell or whether he's really going to retire enough times now that there's no way he comes back and he's ever asked it again. I'd say that if there was any doubt, there certainly isn't anymore. He's done the media rounds. I think riding in the races is becoming a little bit of a solace for him away from the level of interest that he receives when he's at the track.
All right, well, that's the Dubai season over with for another year. As we head towards the Championships Day 1, coming up this Saturday at Royal Randwick, and we get to see friends reunited here. A couple of old sparring partners in one. Zach Purton and Joao Moreira going head-to-head once more.
Yeah, friendly rivalry. Top of the market in the Doncaster handicap there. Zach on Mr. Brightside, Joe on Fangirl, the top two in fixed odds markets there, in most markets at the moment. And yeah, look, great day. Joe heads back to Sydney. A place where he's been pretty heavily criticised in the past, He goes back and he finds a wet track as well. It's a slow 6 rated today, more rain to come for the week. And I think that's been what's found him out in Sydney in the past. It's going to be a fascinating matchup. Zach certainly has the better of the rides there on the day. He also rides Giga Kick, the favourite in the TJ Smith. Joe's on a couple of outsiders. Maybe that takes the pressure off Joe because, it doesn't seem that long ago, but it was 2015. He didn't ride his best on a wet day there in Sydney. He copped a lot of criticism, was on a lot of favourites, including one Winx, in which he was defeated. The last time anyone was defeated on it in the Australian Oaks. Look, this time I think what might be different for Joe is that he goes there with a better look at the track. He's turning up on race day before. Maybe he didn't think he needed to do the type of homework that is required to know where to be on these wet tracks on the days. And because, let's face it, we're talking about the Ark's usually wet. The Championships it's just becoming ridiculous how often it's rain affected. He's going to be ready for it. But this time the difference is he goes there for 5 weeks with Chris Waller, based out of Rose Hill. He's actually riding at Warwick Farm today. It's a fair, well, I don't know if it's a drop-in class, but there won't be many people there at Warwick Farm. There won't be as much pressure. And maybe that will give Joe a chance to really find his way and find a rhythm there in Sydney before the big day comes around on Saturday.
Talk about how many times a question is going to be asked, and how many times the Winx factor is going to be brought up with Joe while he's here as well. But I think you're probably right in terms of his 4 rides in the Group 1s against Zach as well. I'd probably take Zach's book at this stage, but as you point out, with the pressure off Joe, maybe that just means he can ride with a little bit more freedom. And with this meeting going into it, he's not going in cold either, so that could possibly be the difference as well. You caught up with him in Dubai. How is he generally? Is he enjoying this worldwide tour that he's on?
Yeah, I think so. He was a really close second in the Dubai turf down on Beluga. He was super motivated before that race. He just wanted to get out there and if you watch his final 200 stretch down on Beluga, trying to catch the winner, Lord North, you'll see what I mean by motivated. He really was going for that horse. Look, physically, he's in great shape. Mentally, he's in good spirits. But I would say he was pretty frustrated at the local Hong Kong media in Hong Kong. There was a press conference arranged for him where he could speak to the Hong Kong press Cantonese-speaking press that had travelled over. There was just a line of questioning that, look, I would say is pretty disrespectful as well. Doubting the veracity of his injuries, questioning, well, you can ride. You've just ridden 5 winners in a day in Rio. Well, are you going to come back and ride in Hong Kong? And it's as if there's a level of understanding there that he's not really hurt. That's the suggestion, and that's what's being suggested by members of the press. It's disappointing. I can see where Joe's coming from and why he's frustrated, because it's just the questions keep coming. They're basically calling him a liar. They're also ignoring the fact that they're also calling the Jockey Club's own medical doctors, appointed doctors, liars, because Asian Racing Reporters cited actual specialist reports from Hong Kong Jockey Club appointed doctors describing the nature of his injuries, and we can recap them now just for those who can't read. You know, he has a degenerative hip problem, both hips. He'll require hip replacement surgery when he is finished riding. It's excruciatingly painful. The surgery can't take place now because there's too swelling. This is all reported and sourced by Jockey Club people. I guess where people are confused is that the plasma-rich platelet injections that he can receive provide temporary relief to the pain and allow him to ride for a certain amount of time. The effectiveness of those injections not only diminishes over time, so the effectiveness of one injection probably lasts him 6 weeks to 2 months, and the actual, effectiveness of the injections over time diminishes. So the next one isn't as effective as the last one. Eventually they're going to stop working, and eventually he's going to not be able to ride. Now, he can ride well. He's just received another injection before he came from Brazil to Australia. So he's probably got 5 good weeks in him, which he plans to ride in Australia for at least a month. But, it is disappointing when you see media not being able to get their head around some pretty simple reporting, if there is some. Like, really, we should be celebrating the fact that he can ride for the time being, yeah? And that this is it. This is a worldwide farewell. And what we're seeing is a guy who's making the most of his talents in what is a finite amount of time, and he's not even 40 years of age. So, yeah, he was frustrated, and he was on a bit of a media ban. I think getting to Sydney and being there where, look, that weekend, we're getting beaten on wings was, 2015. I think people there are ready to celebrate. He's just another one of a star-studded cast as well of jockeys. There's a really good jockeys room heading down there for the championship. So I'd say that that's going to be good for him, and hopefully we see some pretty special performances. I thought he rode well on World Cup night. Yeah,
I can see from a casual viewer's point of view, they might be watching and they'll say, hang on, I thought he was injured, how come he's still riding? But I say that the information is out there for people informed, whether they're in the industry in some shape or form, to know exactly where he stands. And so hopefully, because Joey's one of the good guys, that he can get a little bit of success over the championships and leave on a high.
I think, disappointingly, from the local press as well, I think there's a lot of mimicry around and signalling from, unfortunately, Hong Kong Jockey Club officials. When it's coming from their mouths, some misinformation or suggestion that he's not really hurt, they kind of just follow the lead. They think that this is what we're meant to say. But not surprising. But yeah, let's celebrate Joao Moreira while he can ride.
100%. All right, what's coming up on the site this week? What are we looking out for?
Well, there's some great stuff from Japan. I really love David Morgan's piece that was published on Tuesday about Japanese horses staying in training and then how that adds, these horses as stallions not being rushed away to start at 3 years of age to protect their value. They're staying in training, and it's adding just tremendous depth to the staying ranks in Japan. We didn't mention it earlier, but if you get a chance, go and check out title holders win in the Nikkei show, the Group 2 at Nakayama from the weekend. If you thought Equinox looked impressive, look, I don't know. It might have been a step down in class, the Shima Classic. If you have a look at title holder, he was second favourite to Equinox in the Ari McKinnon. He looked a little bit leg weary after that run in the Arc, but he won by 8 lengths. He's down with top weight. This is the sort of stuff that David's indicating, is that when you look at the staying ranks in particular, like the Japanese valuing longevity and over precocity, and valuing stamina over speed, what it's bringing is this huge amount of numbers and horses that are able to go overseas. So go and check that out. There'll be another great read from David during the week, our chief journalist David Morgan, and plenty more from Japan, Hong Kong and Australia with the championships coming up.
Yeah, well, I meant to ask you, just going back to Dubai to a certain extent and Hong Kong as well, that catch-up. Jerry Chau, I forgot to ask you about him and Duke. Well, the two Hong Kong sprinters ran very well, I thought, in the Alquaz. Yeah,
and I had a great... and they were happy. I think side success, maybe disappointed because he loomed as that sort of race. Everyone, there's a wall of horses who think they've got a chance. Straight races can be like that, and, maybe they were a bit disappointed, or they were just edged out. But look, the connections of Duke Pierre Ong, big moment for him in his first overseas runner abroad. And even bigger for Jerry Chau. You know, we've got an interview with him up on the site this week where I talked to him about, you know, what he learnt from it. He was always going to go in, win, lose or draw and take something from this. But here he was rubbing shoulders with just an elite group of jockeys. Look, I know he rides against top jockeys every week, but this was something
level.
And just being there with the one ride for the night, just watching him observe and soak it in and feel like he belongs, because, you know, too often one of the oldest stories in Hong Kong racing is the local jockey that's on the top horse and gets replaced by the expat when he gets to Group 1 level. And we've probably broken through that a little bit with Vincent Ho sticking on Golden 60 through this tremendous run, not just when he's won, but when he was rolled. That was the important thing, that Vincent wasn't replaced when he was beaten. But now, even more common was that when the horse goes abroad, that you book the top jockey, either there or take an expat jockey with you. So I just think it's credit to the connections for giving Jerry Chau a chance. Fifth, that's right up there, and the connections were thrilled with that. In the prize money, ran up to expectations. So, well done to the team there.
Great stuff. Look forward to reading that. Thanks as always, Michael. We'll catch up soon.
Thanks, Andrew.
All right, like and subscribe. Follow us on all the major social channels as well, and keep tuning in for more from Asian Racing Review.